Okay, welcome back with Your Life Beyond the Military. This is Vanessa Donaldson, and today I have my clients here, a couple clients that I help with for their VA disability claim work. So I'm just gonna ask a few questions. Thank you guys so much for joining and just get their perspective. Although my husband and I did go through the process as well, you don't just want to hear about me and my experience. You want to hear about people I've been working with. So thank you guys for joining today. I've got the spouse there too because it is a family decision. It's a team event kind of. So John and Kim, thank you for joining. So how long have you been a client of mine? I know we've known each other for years, but how long have we been like working together?
It's interesting. We've known you for, like 30 years, but we've actually only been clients of yours for 2 months,
Yeah,
starting in March, late March.
yeah. Isn't that crazy? And I don't know if you knew what I was doing before. I mean, I think I might have mentioned before, but I just kind of got into it more. So you
Yeah.
just didn't know that this is what I do on the side.
Right.
So that, yeah, so now we're right to the work part. So where were you, like if you go back to your emotions and your feelings, where were you with your VA claim and the status before we connected work-wise?
Well, to be honest with you, when I retired in 2017, I kind of sped through the process and didn't really concern myself too much with the VA process. And I mean, fortunately, I was able to get out with and retire with 60% disability. However, um, over this past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, Kim had been noticing some certain things about my my ailments that were a little bit beyond what I had originally signed off on, I guess, with the VA. So we've been talking about it for a couple years now about me going through some sort of process in order to see if I can, get more from the VA based on the things that are happening to me. But
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
basically was nowhere. If you remember when I talked to you on the phone that day and you brought it up, and I was like, okay, whatever. And then all of a sudden we said, okay, let's try it and we'll do it. And here
right.
we are.
Yeah, and that happens. That okay, whatever. Like for Russ was probably months till he signed on the dotted line and decided to invest in himself and do that. And it's a team effort. I'm talking to another spouse and her husband, and she's ready to go. She's just like, I'm just waiting for him to be on board with me. But it's a mental process. You have to kind of
Yeah.
wrap your head around. There's a lot of trust involved. And if you don't know the person as well either, I mean, we already had a relationship before a friendship, but if you don't know them at all, it's a real skeptical thing to get into. And there's a lot of scams out there and different groups doing different kind of payment plans I'm hearing about. So I'm
It's
just
funny
glad
that
that we're listening.
we know you, so we trust you, but it's also odd talking to you about my ailments because I know you.
Yeah, that's true. There's a whole other,
There's
there's trust and humility, right?
so,
Yeah. And I
abilities.
said, let it all out. And you did. I was like, tell me everything. So you have to. This is not the time to hold
Yeah,
back when you're trying to work on your claim stuff. So
for
kudos
sure.
to you for actually listening to your wife because, like myself too, I had to have my husband's buy-in when I said, let's call this number, let's get some help. No, no, no. And there's all kinds of reasons. There's skepticism, there's just feelings of, why you don't have to pay for it. You can go to the VA, you can go to the VSO, but look what's happening. I have people coming to me because they're getting denial letters over and over again and they're so frustrated. So the
Right.
fact that you have your spouse at your side, that's just huge. I tell people if you have a significant other, keep them in the loop with the whole process and definitely the paperwork. So I know Kim would have answered things differently than you did, and we had to go back over some disability parts because I said, wait a minute, he put this down, but you get Kim on the phone together and she's like, yeah, that was not marked
Yeah.
correctly. So listen to your spouses, guys. You might have like kind of some blind spots, but that's what the spouse is there to kind of clear those and walk you through. And it does take some humility and letting go of we got Marine Corps, a lot of Marine Corps clients here. There's a lot of pride involved, and I don't need it, and I can do this on my own. So at some point, raise the hand and just saying you don't need to do it alone, right?
There's a lot of things that I didn't realize that I had going on that she sees. And I would say whether or not the service member is a male or female or their significant other doesn't matter. It's not gender. It's the
Right.
person that you spend your time with knows things about you that you don't want to believe, especially if
Yeah.
you're a retired Marine or even if you just served 4 years. It doesn't matter how long you served. As a service member, you went through hell, whatever it was that you did, and now your body is reacting to it. Maybe 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later, but your spouse sees it.
What worked well for us was he would fill out the papers. It was I think it was a little too much for us to discuss while he was filling them out. So he would fill them out and then he would go from the den to the living room and he'd say, okay, you go in the den, and I'd go sit down and I'd read everything he had written. And if I needed to bring something up to him, I'd be like, hey, I have a question about this. I think that this does happen. I think you do that, and it
Mm-hmm.
worked out good that way for us.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because if you're just going to wing through that paperwork, you're doing yourself a disservice. So when people, I know they want to get to the next step, let's just fill this out and check it in. But that's the one point you really have to take time to do. And I've had guys come back like a weekend later, 4 days later, and they'll text me like, that was hard. Yeah, because you're bringing up all these memories that you've now suppressed. You put it in your past, and now you're trying to just sit with your significant other, whoever, and sit there and hash it all out again. It's like, do we really have to talk about this again? Especially if
Well,
you've recently had a denial letter.
right, but when you're getting out of the military, now, I'm sure other services are the same as the Marine Corps, but it's not a big promotion that you go talk about your ailments that you've been basically hiding for your career so that you could progress in your career, right? They don't tell you,
Mm,
hey, when you go to medical, because you're not a sick bay commando in your career. You're trying to stay away from medical. You're trying to stay healthy. You're trying to stay fit. You're trying to do the things that you need to do, whether it's physically or mentally. But then when you go to get out, you're like, okay, I got to go to this stupid VA meeting to do this. On my way out, I'm done. Whether you're retiring or whether you're getting out on your AS or whatever the case is, you're just on your way out, and you don't want
yes.
to. Most people, at least that I know, that I've talked to, that I've served with, they just go through the process like I did and said, okay, whatever I have, and I'll accept it. So
Mm-hmm.
if I had known this beforehand, I probably would have been more stringent in my process getting out to make sure that everything was annotated, and I wouldn't have been,
Mm-hmm.
there wouldn't have been a lapse of 6 years, 7 years between retirement and actually
Yeah.
going through the process with you to get additional benefits.
And you mentioned an important part there. I've talked to some pilots too, and that's big. They're not going to go into a doctor and talk about having depression or some PTSD issues. What's going to happen? They're going to be grounded from the job that they're hired for. It just gets really confusing to, hide it in one part of your life and then let's bring it all out now that you're out. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just confusing. It's a confusing process. There's just a lot of mental transition that goes through, and you've worked so hard to get where you're at. Like you said, you're trying to get promotions and move up, and nobody wants to go to some office and sit there and hash all that out and then be like, well, now you can't fly, and now we need to put you on medication. Now we need to do this. And so,
Yeah,
yeah, whatever the timing is for people, I just hope they do it sooner than later. And it's understandable that you don't do it right when you get out, but hopefully sooner, or the process and plan things, so it makes it smoother when you do get out, so that you
yeah,
can, continue that process. So now that you're on the other side, kind of, I know you were on a radio show with me too, and you were still like, well, I'm not quite there yet. I'm like, well, we'll do another video when you're there. And so you couldn't answer this one before, but now that you're on the other side of having received your increase, where were you at and where are you now? And what does it feel like?
well, I was at 60%, and I initially, well, I am totally surprised and taken aback by the process speed, right? I expected that when I got with you and we filled out the paperwork, and I know that there was kind of a little bit of a hurry up based on the situation, but um, everything moved faster. But when I got out of the Marine Corps, it was 180 days from the time I had my initial, VA physical till the time that they said, okay, we're going to give you this amount. So the fact that this stuff was submitted on, I'm guessing April 20th or something, on April 25th, they granted me the 100%. So I would guarantee that that's based on the paperwork that your team helped with and the physical exam and mental exam that were conducted by your team that helped to, I guess, put the right words in the right places to ensure that my ailments were annotated and everything was in order. So there wasn't the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed in such a way that I think the VA probably looked at it and said, okay, this was done professionally. This was done
Mm,
legit. It's not, John Boughton over here scribbling on a napkin saying, hey, my head hurts, I can't sleep at night. It was, going through the process the right way and having
yeah.
everything done, which I can guarantee if I would have gone through the process myself, I wouldn't have been as thorough. I wouldn't have known to ask myself the questions that your team asked. I wouldn't have known how
Mhm.
to I wouldn't have known the physicians that that I normally see. They don't see military, they don't see people going through this process, so they're just like, okay, yeah, you can't sleep here, take some Advil PM. Like, okay, that's good until you can't take it anymore, until you still can't fall asleep. I mean, there's just things that your team did, which again, a pat on your back and your team for their professionalism and their process that expedited and got everything in. And I haven't gotten paid yet because it just got approved on April 25th. And here we are, May. And so basically we're a month and 15 days from the time that we initially started the paperwork till now. But
Yeah.
and I know that the
Yeah.
process normally isn't that fast, but I kind of screwed something up that made us think we had to hurry. You know,
Yeah. So, who would you think is a good fit to work with me?
I would say anyone who has gotten out of the military, whether they retired or they got out and they aren't getting 100%. And whether or not they went through the VA process when they got out and they got 0% on everything, like one of my ailments, I was listed as 0% because they felt like, okay, you said it's an ailment and we don't think it's service related, or we think it's service related, but it's not bad enough. That item then got pushed up to a point where it was able to, through their algorithm, get me up to 100%. So whether or not you're a 10 or 15%, and I don't know what your threshold at the team is, but any ailment that you have, it can be increased if you have a 0%. So as long as someone got out and went through the VA process when they got out, and they've noticed an increase in their ailments, their quality of life, the quality of life of their spouse, the quality of life of their children, whether or not they're struggling to get a job or they're already in a professional job, but they know that they can't perform to the peak that they should be because of some of the things that happened to them during their career, whatever it may be, and that is holding them back, then go through the process and the VA through a professional team that will expedite and get everything done. I don't mean expedite, but I mean get it done the right way.
Right.
One who felt like they might have brushed over the process or just hurried or kind of didn't dive in deep enough when they got out because they just wanted to be done with it. Anyone who felt like maybe that's how they went about the process when they got out or retired would be a really good candidate now to take a closer, more thorough look.
I mean, they talk about it to everyone, whether you got out as a lance corporal or a colonel. Everyone gets out eventually, and when you get out, you're looking at that checkout sheet. You're going, okay, here's someone else I got to see. Crap, I'm trying to get myself lined up for school or a job or prepare my family for a move. If I lived in base housing, whatever the case is, you're trying to transition all this, and that VA process is like, okay, look at my medical record. You got it. I mean,
Yeah, that's it.
here's the stuff I have, and unfortunately, through your career, you may not have even noted the stuff that you've had, but you got to. If you didn't take the time, then you need to make sure you take the time with your team. And I can't recommend a team except for your team. Your team did a great job, and the difference between 60% disability and 100% disability is, I mean, we're talking $3,000 extra tax-free a month. That's a lot of money, and
Bingo.
tax-free, life-changing homeowners property taxes, license plates, hunting and fishing. Like, there's so many things I don't even know all the benefits. I had to talk to a friend of mine who has been 100% disabled, and I couldn't believe how excited he was for me because he knows the life-changing that happens that goes along with it. Again, I haven't experienced it because I don't know, but I
You're
know
gonna
that
learn real quick.
I'll probably be scraping less off the floor, if you know what I mean. Like, I
Yeah.
try to
No,
make
that's
what
awesome.
against me is a lot easier, I believe. I mean, you take that money in your pocket every month, and all of a sudden it's more.
Yeah, it's a game changer. And I remember one of the doctors when we went through the process when Russ, my husband, first got out. He same thing. He just did checks in the box. He came back so quickly from that appointment too. I said, "Wait, was that your like exit medical screening?" And he's like, on to something else. And I'm like, that seemed really quick. He's like, well, with some young guy, he's like a boot. He's just starting off. Like he had some intern or something to his processing after he's been 22 plus years in the Marine Corps. And I'm like, already then I was thinking, oh gosh, this isn't going to go well, and it didn't. And he was just like, whatever. So yeah, it takes a process to go through it. But on the other side, and then you realize, and I think I'm still learning every time I talk to someone. I mean, I wasn't into hunting and fishing earlier, but this is our life now. That's what we do in retirement. So we look for campgrounds and we can stay places 50% off. And
Yeah.
we in our own state, the DV parking, like all this stuff, it just goes on and on. You don't think about it till you're on the other side. So congratulations to that. And I would say, what would you say to someone who's stuck on the fence as we end here? They're just on the fence, like, I don't know if I want to put this financial commitment. There's some free services out there. I don't know this woman. What would you say to
Well,
someone?
here's the only thing I can say is, which again, we had talked about doing something, but then when I look at cost, how do I take 2 months of my 60% and put it forward in hopes that I'm going to gain more money per month? But the reality is, because the cost is about the same as the increase from 60 to 100. So I can't imagine if you're getting 40% and you go up to 100, or 10% up to 60%. The difference in monetary value, it's basically, it pays for itself in 1 month. And if you have
Mhm.
dependents, like I have 2 college-age kids that we've been putting through college, now the increase is higher because of the VA, or because of the increased claim. So now that my disability rating is higher, the money that comes from the VA is higher. So if you're a family with 3 kids or 2 kids and they're in high school, you can move up from 60% to 100%. All of a sudden, your kids are going to go to college for a discounted rate or free. I don't know the extent of it because my kids are already on the tail end of their college, so I won't be able to use those benefits. But it just adds up. The cost, it looking now, I could say, okay, if it was $10,000, I would have had to say, okay, I don't have to take a loan out to get this. But it really
Right.
would be worth it to do that because in 3 months
Yeah.
it pays for itself.
Yeah. We call it ROI, return on investment, within
Yes.
1 to 2. So, well, awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. Is there something else you were about to say, Kim? I don't know. You're like, you're like Linda. I'm like, is there something else you want to leave in for the spouses? But I just love what you shared. I'm so grateful, and I get so excited when I get those text messages like you guys sent. It was like a screenshot.
Uh,
Like, I had to put my glasses on. I'm like, oh, there's some zeros there. So it just
uh,
makes my day. So it's an awesome way to spend my
we
retirement
can't thank
season.
you enough. But
Yeah.
you've been a family friend of ours since before I met Kim. I knew you and I knew
You used
Russ.
to babysit our daughter before you
Yeah. I
were
mean,
married or had kids.
the fact that I tell everyone that my good friend Russ and his wife Vanessa are helping us out, and that we went to Stardust course together back in whatever 1996, 1997. Like, it's
Yeah.
that long we've held this relationship where we see each other maybe once every 3 years or something. But the fact that you're able to help us out in this way, it really is life
Yeah.
changing, and we look forward to being able to see you and once again. Hopefully, we
Yes.
can stop soon and
Pass
we can.
pass through with the van here and there on our van lifing days. Yeah, it's a game changer. And what I really just pray and wish for all our veteran families is to have that second chance at retirement, on their terms without having to scrape. I know so many vets that are like working 2 or 3 jobs. I mean, I was on the phone with one and he was working like, I'm sorry, I'm on the night shift. We got to coordinate a time to talk because he's working through the nights, a second job. And one guy who just, got left Walmart because he only makes $18 an hour and he's looking for something else. And I'm just like, oh my Lord, these are veterans that served our country and they
Yeah.
deserve more. So I say, we serve because you deserve. That's like my little thing. I say, we serve because you deserve. And we just want people to have that, I call it from back end battlefield, like in my little book that I did, a book collaboration, back end
Yeah.
battlefield to blissful retirement. So yeah, let's leave on that note with your blissful retirement behind you. What is that scene behind you there? Oh my gosh, if that does not look like blissful retirement, guys. Yes, that's it. That's
Well,
it.
we can pay for it. We can pay for it with the raise we're gonna get.
You're gonna pay for it. You're in a homestead. You got the homestead now, so you're gonna save on property tax. I mean, it just goes on. So God
Yeah.
bless you all. Thank you all. Go take care of those kids, and I
All right.
will catch you in your driveway one day, maybe. Take
Hopefully,
care.
bye, Vanessa.
Bye.